Hey everybody. As you know, I've been a targeted individual for at least 20 years. This is another update on the strange harassment. I'm trying to do these updates every couple of months so they don't end up being too long. The last update was on September 10th, 2016, so I'm going to start there and move forward. The day after I posted that last update, I noticed that the light in my dining room was flickering in unison with my eyes blinking. So the first time it did that, I dismissed it as coincidence, but then it happened 2 more times within a 5-minute period, perfectly coordinated with my blinks. So at the exact moment my eye would blink, the light would go off for a second. And again, that happened at least 3 times, all in the span of a few minutes. It was one of those fluorescent light bulbs, so I got rid of it, and it has not happened since then. Next, I started receiving spam email from an insurance company that I briefly worked for a few years ago. You might remember back in 2012, I explained that one of the managers was repeating my thoughts out loud, which was weird to say the least. And there were several other strange incidents at that place involving them watching my son at his daycare. And I had been assigned to that job through the state welfare department. Anyway, I told you about that at the time. Well, now I'm getting spam emails from that company advertising life insurance. And I do perceive that as a threat. Also, I noticed the spam emails were based out of Tennessee, and I've had 2 other very disturbing experiences with 2 other seemingly unrelated companies that were also based in Tennessee. So I don't know if there's a connection there. I've tried to block the emails also without success. Next, remember that drill sound that used to wake me up in the other apartment that I lived in? As you know, I moved this summer, but the drill sound happened again in the new apartment. It woke me up and it sounded like it was right against the wall next to my head. It only lasted about 3 to 5 seconds. Then I got up and went to the restroom, and the neighbors came into their adjacent bathroom banging things around. That's happened many times. I'm not even going to mention how many times that's happened. At first, I wanted to believe it was coincidence, but there's more. The same neighbors had just coincidentally been outside at the same time I would leave or come home on more than a few occasions. And it was happening enough that I mentioned it to my mom, and after that, they stopped doing it. Next, you might remember the neighbors at the other apartment were calling me an ape. Well, in September, my son came into the kitchen randomly and spelled the word ape with refrigerator magnets on the fridge and then left the room. And when I asked him why he did that, he said he didn't know. Next, one of the packages that I ordered was completely open when it arrived at my house. It was a USPS package delivered by the post office. I don't have a car, so I have to order a lot of things for delivery. Sometimes the packages arrive and part of the tape is torn or separated from the box, leaving one side of the box open. But this time, the entire box was completely open, and the flaps of the box were flapping open. And that's happened a few times in the past few months. One other time it was almost completely open with just about an inch of tape holding it shut. But the other thing that was unusual about that particular incident, where the flaps on the box were completely open when I received it, was that the package arrived 1 day late, but it had been marked as delivered by the post office. It was marked as delivered the day before, but I didn't receive it until the next day. And when I received it, it was completely open. Also, about 2 days after my 6-year-old son spelled the word ape on the fridge, I was walking him to the park, which is something I do pretty regularly in the summer, and along our path, there were 3 bananas laying there, which may or may not be related to the perps calling me an ape. But they've done things like that before. You might remember back in 2011, something similar happened where someone left 3 dead animals along my regular path to the bus stop. So again, I don't know if that was part of the harassment, but they've done that type of thing before. And like I said, that happened just 2 days after my son randomly spelled ape on the refrigerator for no apparent reason. Next, the apartment that I live in does yearly inspections. It's low-income housing. And like I said, I just moved here last summer. So after they did the first inspection, I thought they were done. But then a few weeks later, they randomly showed up at my door again. I guess they had put a notice on my door the day before, but I missed it. So I asked my manager why they were doing another inspection, and the manager said the first was a state inspection and the second was a federal inspection. And I sort of thought it was strange since no one said anything about 2 inspections. And the manager specifically told me when I moved in that this building is not federal. In fact, at the time, I thought it was sort of odd that the manager kept mentioning it over and over, saying that they are not federal and they are not associated with the federal government in any way. So it was sort of odd when they did a second surprise inspection saying it was a federal inspection. But I didn't really think much of it. They seemed nice when they were here. But then the day after the inspection, I was going to the store with my mom, and I mentioned in the car something very specific. And when I got to the store, I walked past 2 men who were just standing there, and one of them repeated what I said in the car. So I turned around to get a look at him, and he looked similar to the man who had inspected my apartment the day before. He was about the same height, same build, same coloring, but I was several feet away, so I didn't get a good look. But here's the weird part. He didn't just repeat what I said in the car. He also repeated a thought that I had while I was saying it that I didn't say out loud. So that was disturbing enough, but to add to that, he looked like the man who had been in my apartment the day before. And there's another thing about that man. When he was inspecting my apartment, he was tampering with one of the water heaters in my bedroom closet. I couldn't see what he was doing, and I didn't really think anything of it. But now, a few months later, there's been a strange sound that seems to be coming from that water heater. And the weird thing is that the sound is sometimes correlated to my movements in that room. But I'll explain that later when I get to it. So the next thing is that sometimes it seems like someone is getting access to my YouTube ideas before I even upload them. For example, in October, I randomly had this sudden understanding about Revelation 9 that I hadn't understood before. So I typed up my YouTube transcript earlier that week than I normally do. And by the way, it was the red star video that I uploaded in October. Anyway, I had typed up the transcript several days before I recorded and uploaded the video. And another YouTuber who has considerably more subscribers than me uploaded a video on the same exact scripture with the same interpretation, like a day before I uploaded my video. And I just thought it was odd that he randomly decided to start talking about that the same week I was intensively working on it. I mean, I don't know if someone gave him the information or if it just came into his mind. He didn't really say much about it, so I could tell he hadn't really done very much research on the subject. He was just talking about it and mentioned that scripture, but I had been researching intensively all week, and it was a really deep subject. I just hadn't uploaded it yet. So I don't know what to think about that. It just struck me as odd. Next, you might remember that my mom has said things more than a few times that make it seem like she somehow knows what's going on in my apartment when she's not there. And I'm not trying to say she's watching me. I just don't understand how she seems to know certain things. For example, you might remember me mentioning the time I spilled coffee on my carpet, and then she mentioned what happened in exact detail the next time I saw her. Then another time I told you about how I heard a noise or something outside one night, and I looked out the window and the apartment manager was standing outside, and it wasn't clear what she was doing there. Just standing there, kind of in a weird way. And that was at the other apartment complex that I used to live in last year. So I thought it was really strange, but I didn't say anything to my mom or anyone else. But the next time I saw my mom, she asked me if I ever look out the window at night. So I thought that was a strange question. It's just weird how she does that, and I'm not sure what's going on. I mean, maybe she has dreams too that come true and she just never told anyone. I don't know. But there was also that time when I noticed that one of my specific clothing items was torn in my drawer. And the next time I saw her, she mentioned that the same clothing item of hers was torn in her drawer. And again, I hadn't said anything to her about that. And I mentioned those things in other TI updates, and it happened again recently. In November, I got a sharp pain on the left side of my head, and I winced and touched the spot on my head for a moment. And I never said anything to anyone about it. But when I saw my mom, she described the exact same incident to me. She said she got a sharp pain in the left side of her head, and she winced and touched the spot on her head for a minute. She said she thought it was a virus. And that reminds me of another time. I don't know if you remember, a few years back, I had those dizzy spells and never said anything to anyone about it prior to me uploading the YouTube video. And again, I hadn't said anything, and she mentioned that she had dizzy spells and that if I had them, not to worry because it was just a virus. So there's something weird going on there. And to be honest, it's scaring me. And there are other things too, but I'm not going to go into it right now. Next, something happened with my phone, and I couldn't call or receive text. I could only reach the phone company, and I spoke to a few different call center employees in an attempt to try to fix the problem. And both of them were giving me the runaround, putting me on hold for 20 minutes, and then coming back and telling me to turn off the phone, which wasn't helping. But the second person I talked to there, when he put me on hold, I could hear people in the background laughing, saying, "She's fat." And that's something that the perps have been saying to me lately. There were 2 other times off the top of my head that I hadn't thought to mention, but they were odd. One time I was in the store and I heard a guy say, "She's fat." And I looked, and it was some young guy looking at me, and he was pointing his camera at me. And he did not have a shopping cart or even a shopping basket. So he wasn't shopping. And I didn't see anyone else with him that was shopping either. So I just kept shopping, and I didn't really think about it. I just told myself that it was a coincidence and that he must have been talking about someone else. But then another time, I was stepping out of my mom's car, and at the exact moment I stepped out, a woman walked by and said, "She's fat," again. So I wasn't going to say anything about it, but then it happened again when I was put on hold by the phone company. And by the way, they never solved the problem with my phone. I just gave up because I didn't have time to deal with it. And then a few weeks later, my phone just magically started working again. And by the way, I'm not fat, but even if I was, it still doesn't explain why these young kids would be interested in that. It's scary because they're not just stalking me, they're also able to mess with my phone, and that could ultimately become a hazard at some point. If they're able to render my phone useless and laugh at me while I try to call for help, that is truly like something out of a horror movie. And again, I don't know these people. I've never seen them before in my life. Next, there's a lady at a business that I frequent who I believe is a perp. She started working there after I started going there, and she's made a few trigger comments. For example, one time I came in and a different clerk was helping me, but she came over to me just to mention that I looked pale. Then another time, she said that when she saw me, she wondered who I was, and she mentioned my first and last name. And after that, she mentioned something about being bipolar. And that's something the perps have mentioned before. It's not true. I've never been diagnosed, and I'm not bipolar. But the perps keep making that accusation. I've heard other TIs say the same thing. There was that other time when I was at the park with my son, and two men went and stood directly in front of my son while he was on the slide. And when I came up behind them, I heard one say to the other, and the mom is bipolar, and something about needing medication. So when this lady was mentioning my first and last name and how she wondered who I was and always coming over insulting me, I let it go, but I kept it in the back of my mind. And when she added the bipolar thing, I knew for sure that she was a perp. Also, there were two other people there who seemed to be involved. There was a man and another woman, and they both commented when she made that bipolar statement. And the woman that was behind me said something, and when she said it, she used the same exact tone and inflections that my stepmother uses. I don't know how to explain that. It's just a manner of speaking. It was exact. It was almost like I was hearing my stepmother talking behind me. It was bizarre. So either that woman is in the same social circles as my stepmother, or the perps want me to think that she is, because that's not the first time they've done that. There's a man on YouTube who is attacking me, and he's using the TI guys to do it. Anyway, I saw one of his videos, and I heard a woman's voice in the background, and her voice sounded very similar to my stepmother's voice. And it sounded like she was coaching him on what to say. And he was saying that we're morons and other things that are not true. Basically just another attempt to discredit us. It seemed like it was obviously an intimidation tactic, as if to say that they can label me crazy very easily. But I wondered after that why they were choosing bipolar disorder as opposed to schizophrenia. And I think I know why. Obviously, if a target is acting crazy, the schizo rumor works. But if the target is not acting crazy and instead is actually being nice, then the bipolar rumor works better because it discredits everything they ever did that was nice, while also demonizing them and making them seem scary even though they aren't. Because think about it, if you were talking to someone who seemed really nice, and then someone else told you they were bipolar, how would you feel about them then? You would most likely not have positive feelings toward them, regardless of how nice they were to you. That is the reason that they use the bipolar rumor, to discredit your good behavior. Again, this goes back to the 18th century Jesuit book I showed you before. I'll link it below. The beast has been using the same techniques for hundreds of years. That's one reason we know it's the seventh head of the beast, the Holy Roman Empire, that is responsible for these attacks. We're still living under that. Intelligence personnel have even come out saying that it does seem to be a religious organization doing this. The Jesuit book said that if a person will not support the Catholic Church, they will take significant measures in order to destroy that person's life by hiding all the good things that they do and advertising anything bad that they do. And if they don't do anything bad, then they will make up lies about that person. That's their technique. And by the way, they are in everything now, not just religion. The Bible itself tells us the beast is doing it. The perps are false accusers, and the Bible itself uses the term devil, which means false accuser. So these perps attacking you are literally devils, according to the Bible. So moving on, later that day, I was at the store and a lady came up behind me and stood directly behind me facing the opposite direction. So I was standing in a small aisle looking at something, and she came up and stood directly behind me, almost like a mirror. It was so exact, but facing the shelf behind me, and her back was almost touching my back. And she did not have a shopping cart, and I did not notice a shopping basket either. So she wasn't shopping. She just stood there frozen for a few minutes until I moved to a different place in the aisle, and then she left, and she didn't buy anything. And I've told you before how the perps do that. Sometimes they even do it facing my back. A man did that another time directly behind me, facing me. No cart, no basket, not shopping, just standing there way too close. It's harassment. Those of you who have experienced it know it. And those who do it know what they're doing. And the Bible says they are literally devils. And right when that lady did that, by the way, a man walked by whistling, which is another trigger that they do on me as well as other TIs. I've heard other TIs talking about it. I don't know why they do that, but it's part of the, it's something that they did when I was a child as well, around the time that I was assaulted. So this was an orchestrated attack that they did that is connected to an assault that happened to me as a child. So they are antagonizing me about that. And I'm pretty sure their goal is to cause me to snap in public. So next, the neighbor next to my apartment has occasionally slammed things against or knocked on the wall adjacent to my bed for no apparent reason. Sometimes it seems like an accident, like something just bumped the wall. But this past month, they knocked 3 quick little knocks right next to my head that woke me up. And at that point, I knew it was being done on purpose. Then another day, my alarm clock went off, and as usual, I turned it off as soon as I could so it wouldn't bother the neighbors. But immediately when the alarm clock went off, they opened and shut a drawer that is adjacent to where my alarm clock is. Then I got up to go to the bathroom and noticed that the other neighbors had their bathroom fan on and it was really loud, which didn't really mean anything to me at first. But when I opened the door to my bathroom, they turned the fan off. Then I realized I forgot to do something, so I did not enter the bathroom and I went somewhere else for a minute. And when I walked away from the bathroom, their fan came back on. So they turned it off at the same moment I opened the door. Then I walked away and they turned the fan back on. And then after a minute, I came back to the bathroom, and at the exact moment I stepped into the bathroom, they turned the fan off again. And I also heard a female voice saying something, but I didn't listen. Then when I came out of the bathroom, at the exact moment that I shut the door, the water heater made a weird sound, like perfectly correlated with me shutting the door. So again, those incidents all in a row were not a coincidence. And the thing with the water heater is it's not a normal sound. It's louder and more abrasive, like a bumping sound, like someone dropped something. And as I said before, that man who inspected my apartment was fiddling with it. And I didn't have any problems with it prior to him doing that. I've lived here since last summer, and I never noticed that sound until after he messed with it. And I didn't notice it until just recently, like in the past month. And the first few times that the sound coordinated with what I was doing, it just seemed like a coincidence. Like I would hang something in my closet and it would make a big banging sound at the exact moment the hanger touched the rack. But it happened enough that I started developing a mild anxiety about hanging up my clothes. And again, the man that was fiddling with it a few months ago, the manager said he was federal, even though the manager had gone on previously about how this complex is not federal. And the day after the man was messing with the water heater, someone at the store who looked very similar to him repeated back something I said in the car on the way to the store. And now the water heater that he messed with is making loud, unusual sounds that coordinate with my movements in the room, like when I sit down or when I close the door or when I hang up my clothes. So I can't help but wonder if there's some type of sensor device that he put back there. And there's no way I would know what it is if I looked. And the man actually seemed nice when he was here. I didn't have any problems with him outwardly. I mean, I did sense some negativity a little bit. I remember thinking that there's something that I'm sensing from him. I wasn't sure what but it wasn't overt. And I just dismissed it. And I did not even believe it was accurate because, like I said, he seemed like a nice person. But those three things that seem to be surrounding him are strange, really strange, and terrifying, actually. It's hard to explain if you haven't been through something like this. But for those of you going through this stuff, just know that you're not alone. And the Bible prophecies are for you, to give you encouragement. It even says that. It's those who are being persecuted. It was written for them. It's you. If you're being persecuted, it's you. It was written for you. And it says that the harassment is about to end, and the devils, the literal devils that are doing this to you are going to be punished by God. That's what it says. So please try to hang on. Don't give in to what they want. The Bible says these false accusers go about like a roaring lion seeking those who they can devour. And I was watching something about that recently. It was a well-known rabbi who was explaining that lions do not roar when they are hunting. The enemy is roaring to cause you to panic. They're doing these things to cause you to flip out. And if you flip out, then they can devour you by sending you to jail or having you committed or whatever, or maybe even killing you. I don't know. So that's what they want, and that's what they seem to need. They seem to need you to flip out. It's like a protocol. So I've been targeted for over 20 years, and in that time, I've realized a few things about the enemy, and that is that they seem to have a protocol. As evil as they are, they still seem to follow their own rules. And it seems like they are antagonizing certain people because they want those people to do the things that they need them to do in order to devour them, in order to attack them. So I understand now why Jesus advised us to love those who persecute us. If someone tries to steal your coat, give it to them. If they strike your cheek, turn your face and let them strike your other cheek. He knew the enemy. He knew that they want you to look like the evil one. They want you to fight back so they can say that you are evil. They're putting good for evil and evil for good. So, Turning the other cheek is easier said than done. But I understand now why he advised us to do that. He knew the enemy. These ancient prophecies that are coming true show that these ancient people knew our enemy well. I mean, it's bizarre. I don't completely understand it, but just know that you're not alone. And these prophecies say your redemption is coming soon. So I hope you're doing okay, and I will talk to you later.